Great news! Resident Evil Requiem absolutely kicks ass. While it was initially advertised as a survival horror vehicle for new protagonist Grace Ashcroft, it turns out Requiem is equally a reunion with the series fan favorite hero, Leon S. Kennedy.
Yeah, I'm here.
Despite showing up in several remakes recently, Leon hasn't had a genuinely new adventure since Resident Evil 6. That was 14 years ago. Requiem brings us a Leon who's still that campy, quippy, tough-as-nails legend we've always loved, but now he's older, wiser, and carrying a bit more baggage with him. This kind of return is pretty uncommon in video games, but take a look at the screenings at your local multiplex and you'll see it's happening all the time now in movies. Old heroes from old franchises coming back to prove that a few extra wrinkles can't stop you from kicking ass. That's exactly what Resident Evil Requiem has done. It feels like a Hollywood blockbuster legacy sequel for one of the coolest video game characters of all time. You could easily make the argument that Resident Evil 4 is the greatest video game ever created, and die-hard fans of Capcom's Game Changer have wanted a reunion with Leon for decades. His short part in Resident Evil 6 simply wasn't enough, and while 2023's Resident Evil 4 remake was incredible, it was ultimately a retelling of a story that we all knew extremely well. Especially me, I have a Resident Evil chainsaw controller. God, I love that game so much. For years, we've been left wondering if we'd ever get anything like Leon's gory Spanish Vacation ever again, at least until now. Resident Evil Requiem is a worthy successor to Resident Evil 4, but more than that, it gives us a fresh take on Leon that's more interesting than many sequels offer. Despite being a medium that has been going strong for over 50 years now, video games rarely let their protagonists grow older. Mascot characters like Super Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog are basically the same age now as they were when they were first introduced in the 80s and 90s. There are a few exceptions, of course. Uncharted's Nathan Drake had aged slightly by the time we said goodbye to him in 2016, and Tomb Raider's Lara Croft has jumped around at various stages in her 20s throughout her numerous sequels and reboots, but most video game characters live in an endless time loop, destined to stay encased in amber at the same age forever, like Bart Simpson and his fellow classmates being stuck in 4th grade for decades. The Resident Evil franchise, on the other hand, is different. It's one of the few long-running video game series that actually allows its characters to experience the passage of time, albeit with all sorts of silly B-movie plot armor, continuity leaps, and other various nonsensical story beats to help carry them along the way. That's why seeing a gruffer, more weathered Leon S. Kennedy return in Resident Evil Requiem feels so special. It's something we don't get to see very often in video game form. Video games are largely power fantasies after all, and seeing an old Super Mario clutch his knees after a triple jump or a hunched-over Sonic the Hedgehog catching his breath in the middle of a half-pipe run would be way less cool and way more of a stark reminder of our weary, fragile lives than just seeing those guys at their peak age forever. On the other hand, Hollywood loves to bring back older versions of classic movie characters for a big legacy sequel, partly because it's fun to check in on old friends you haven't seen in a while, but mostly because human actors, unlike video game characters, actually get older as time passes. For example, think about Harrison Ford in Star Wars: The Force Awakens portraying an older, grayer Han Solo, or Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny portraying an older, grayer Indiana Jones, or Harrison Ford in Blade Runner 2049 portraying an older, grayer Rick Deckard. I swear I have more examples besides Harrison Ford. I really do. Do all these movies need to exist? Definitely not. But when a legacy sequel works, they feel like a great reunion with someone we haven't seen in a while, and sometimes even a perfect final send-off to a character we've cherished our entire lives and might never see again.
Hey, over here.
We may have technically caught up with Leon recently thanks to the glorious Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes, but those games take place in 1998 and 2004, respectively. The Resident Evil timeline progresses in real time though, so in Requiem, set in 2026, Leon is actually much older now, and he's got the wrinkles and mannerisms to prove it. He's slightly less likely to crack a corny one-liner or silly pun after a big violent encounter, but don't worry, the man still has some great jokes here and there.
You know, I do have a question. When's the last time you brushed your teeth?
Requiem balances Leon's dad jokes, or maybe those are hot uncle jokes, with some grit and gravitas. He's reminded of his regrets and past feelings as he revisits the horrors that unfolded in his early days as a cop in Raccoon City, with its current bombed-out streets, dilapidated police station, and gun shop all trudging up the grief and remorse from his first big missions. But while this offers a darker side to Leon's story, we don't really get a deep look into his personal life, which definitely works in both the characters and our favor. Going decades without seeing Han Solo just to find out he ended up being a deadbeat dad who'd resorted to once again dealing with low-life gangsters and petty crimes in The Force Awakens was a pretty depressing get-together in hindsight, like running into an older kid from your town that you grew up idolizing and finding out he still lives with his mom and he mostly just sells cigarettes to teenagers behind a gas station.
Pisses me off! Ah!
We didn't need that downer with Han, and I'm glad we don't get that with Leon, a character who in Requiem is largely focused on a new assignment with nearly all the passion, intensity, and wit we expect from him. He's struggling with his memories of Raccoon City because he's back in it, not missing his daughter's dance recital because he's pounding shots at the bar, although he does have a wedding band, and I have some questions about that. What's important though, and an experience unique to the video game medium, is that Requiem's Leon still feels like he did in Resident Evil 4, despite being much older. Mechanically, he moves and controls just like he did in RE4's 2023 remake, just with a few extra tricks up his sleeve thanks to the benefit of age and experience. There were so many little moments in Requiem where I thought to myself, I cannot believe I'm getting more Resident Evil 4 right now. It wasn't that I'd thought I'd never play anything like that again in this franchise, it's just that after RE7 and Village, I truly had no idea where things would go next. And while Requiem certainly does build on the survival horror elements of those games, when you're put in control of Leon, it really does feel like a return to the character's best days. So many of Leon's sections in Requiem work as callbacks to things I loved about Resident Evil 4, but he approaches them with the added benefit of the wisdom and experience that comes with getting old. Remember the chainsaw-wielding lunatics from the Village? Well, there's new ones now, and this time, you can shoot the chainsaws out of their hands and then use the chainsaws to tear up a room full of zombies. Remember the high-speed jet ski escape sequence? There's a new one now. It's not a jet ski, but it's infinitely cooler and adds some really awesome enemies into the mix. Not everything here is an improvement over Leon's most iconic missions, of course. Requiem doesn't have a lovely, weird merchant character or shiny costume jewelry jangling from its corridor ceilings for inexplicably hiding in the bellies of its creepiest basement creatures. Resident Evil 4 is, after all, one of those once-in-a-lifetime video games where a team of bold, creative geniuses were given several years and a blank slate to create a sprawling, cinematic single-player game that reinvented a beloved franchise as we knew it.
Rain or shine, you're going down.
We'll almost certainly never get anything like it on that scale again, but when Requiem comes close to hitting some of those same highs, it is a fantastic feeling. But the one thing a truly great legacy sequel recognizes, and one that Requiem very much understands, is that our heroes don't live forever, and frankly, it's selfish of us to expect them to. The people we look up to eventually get old and die, and leave us with just the memories to remember them by. Yeah, even the ones that can somersault over zombies or dive roll through second-story glass windows and land on both feet unfazed. Leon, you're so cool. But the greatest heroes don't just leave their legacy behind. They impart their wisdom and experience on the next generation in the hope that they will grow to become as great or even greater than they ever were. That's how legacy sequels bring together their original and new cast members, and we see that in action with Leon and Grace, a skittish FBI agent who enters into Requiem's instantly threatening story with fear and trepidation. Grace begins her journey quite literally stumbling around in the darkness, holding a crude knife in a shaky hand, struggling to survive. But by teaming up with Leon while also confronting her own past traumas, she slowly becomes a strong, resilient, fully capable star of her own. She might never go full-blown action hero like her mentor, and that's okay, but it's exciting to think her story may just be getting started. What we see between her and Leon is a torch-passing ritual, a necessary chapter in any ongoing story where characters are allowed to age naturally, reach the end of their tale, and eventually die. That's not to say I would turn down any more adventures with our old friend Leon in the future. Of course, I love that guy, and I think there's still a lot of gas left in his tank. I just don't know if I want to play a video game where he's 80 years old and I need to upgrade his hip replacements every time he attempts a spin kick. Then again, for all the ways Requiem handles an aging legend gracefully, Resident Evil has long been a franchise where body-mutating megaviruses and super serums allow once-human characters to return bigger and stronger than ever, even after getting axed apart or blown to smithereens with nukes. So hey, maybe next time Leon's in town, he'll be looking a little less like a hot uncle.
Can't have that, can we?
But until they jump that zombie shark, and this series literally does have a zombie shark, I'll gladly take more Grace and Leon games in the future. And seeing how well Capcom handled an older Leon opens up all kinds of possibilities for other classic Resident Evil characters to return with a few more gray hairs in the future. After all, Resident Evil Requiem never makes any mention of Claire Redfield outside of a reference on the charm, so here's hoping she shows up in some DLC or even gets a star in the next mainline game. Either way, it's great to see a series I've loved for so long find so many great ways to stay alive and thriving while so many other classic franchises shamble along long past their expiration dates, kind of like those rotting, festering zombies that Leon and now Grace are so great at killing. So, what are your thoughts on Resident Evil Requiem, finally getting a reunion with Leon S. Kennedy, and where do you want the future of Resident Evil to go? I've loved these games for most of my life. I'm so happy we keep getting great ones. Thank you so much for watching, and for all things video games, Resident Evil, and more, stick with IGN. Nighty-night, Knights.
This time, you ain't getting back up.